So the year was, I believe, 2005. I came up with this idea. I was at a church in Indiana, and I came up with this idea, and my thought process was this. On Father's Day, we always challenge the fathers to be better men. It's always a challenging sermon. And on Mother's Day, it's all kind of fluffy, feel good, mothers are awesome, which they are, but there's not a lot of challenge to it. So I came up with this brilliant idea to deliver a sermon entitled, Mothers Are Selfish Too. And, the easiest way to say this is it wasn't received very well. And by far the most negative feedback I've ever got on any message that I've ever delivered. So not only are mothers selfish, they're mean, when you challenge them. But I had this thought process. I didn't execute it well at all. I think I even threw the sermon away. I don't even think I still have it. But I just want to assure you, I'm not going to give that message today. But I do want to challenge us always, regardless of the day, the holiday or whatever, to really trust God as much as possible and to love each other in only ways that God can help us love. And sometimes that means putting others before ourselves. And if you think about it, that's what moms do all the time. My mom was very smart, but she got married when she was 18 and 19. My dad was 19, and she ended up working to put my dad through college. And she never got to go to college or pursue her dreams. And then she had kids when they were young. In fact, they were empty nesters at like age 39 or 40. And all of us were out of the house. I have two sisters. And so, and then she worked to put my sisters through college and those kinds of things. And so my mom is a great picture of self-sacrifice and love and loving us more than she loved herself. I'm watching my daughter do that now. Her name's Kenzie. She's got 4 kids. Between the ages of 5 and 10. She had 4 kids in 5 years, and I started asking, hon, I love you, but do you know how this whole thing works? And she says, yes, we understand, but it's a lot, and I feel like sometimes she's lucky to get up out of the morning, let alone do something for herself. And I just have such respect for her and love for her and the job that she's doing and raising those kiddos, and I'm so proud. So mothers are a really good example, but it should be an example to all of us in terms of God really wants us to be in constant movement and progress and in developing our relationship with Him. This theme and the series that we're in is called Movement and Progress. And my idea is this: movement always causes growth. The idea of movement is you take steps of faith, you try things, you move towards God, you serve maybe in a way that you weren't thinking you could serve, you talk to someone about Jesus that you thought maybe I could never say anything, whatever it might be, you move. Movement always causes growth, even if it's bad movement. Even if you make a mistake and move a wrong direction, at least you've learned, I shouldn't do that again. Right, and that's progress in your relationship with the Lord. Now, progress is the important part. We want to pursue progress and rejoice in making progress, not perfection. Perfection as a biblical idea exists only in the form of heart desire and striving to do right things, not executing everything perfectly all the time. So as we move towards God in an active way, not just with words, but with behavior, we make progress and stirring our desire to be more like Christ, and we rejoice in the progress, not always doing everything right all the time. So we're going through sort of some character studies. Today we're talking about Ruth. And when you think about Ruth, the book of Ruth, it's such a relief to read Ruth after you read, what's the book before Ruth? Judges. Judges is oppressive at times. And it's just like, drinking from a fire hydrant of yuck. It's really awful how sinful and rebellious people can be. And then you have this almost short story that's very encouraging and inspiring, tucked right after Judges, where we can learn about what it means to really trust God when circumstances are difficult, what it means to really love others. Trusting and loving is what we're talking about today. So the whole premise of the sermon is movement and progress are vital qualities that help us grow in our relationship with God. And then the book of Ruth teaches us much about trusting God and loving others. We're going to go quickly through this whole book in one message. which isn't all that easy to do, but hopefully for some of you it's a story that's somewhat familiar. But my first person that I want to talk about three people this morning in relating to trusting and loving God. And the first one is Naomi. Naomi is Ruth's mother-in-law. So Naomi, we learn trusting God amidst loneliness and despair. We learn how to trust God when things are just really discouraging in life. So let me pick up the story in Ruth chapter 1, verse 1. It says, "In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephraimites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah, the other Ruth, and they had lived there about 10 years. Both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband." So you get the feeling that poor Naomi is going through a rough time, and she is. But you have to ask yourself the question, why is all of this happening, and why go to Moab when they were already in Bethlehem, the promised land that God said all Israelites should live in? And so I think what was going on is there was a famine, and food was short, and rather than trusting God and sticking it out in the promised land, they went to the non-promised land, the country of Moab, where they worshiped a different god named Chemosh. And they tried to figure out how to solve this famine problem on their own. So somewhere in the working of the fields, which, by the way, is kind of ironic because Bethlehem is a play off the name House of Bread. So they went to a place, a foreign place, to find bread, but what they really needed to do was stay in Bethlehem and trust God through this whole deal. But somehow Elimelech died, and then they also, while they were there, they didn't have Israelite women to marry, so they married Moabite women. And so leaving the promised land and going to a foreign field and then marrying non-Israelite people, those are 2 things that God said in Deuteronomy and other passages of the Torah. Don't do that. Don't do that on your own. Don't trust your logic. I mean, it seems like maybe they must have had food at that time, but they're not going to have food forever, and famine and drought affect everyone. You need to trust in me, not in your own ability to figure out your own food shortage and those kinds of things. But all of this happened. It was very, very tragic. And really, the bigger picture is the clan that Elimelech was a part of was basically about to become extinct and be annihilated. If a man didn't have his land, if he left his land, and then if he died and he was married, the poor woman that was left behind was at the mercy of either family members that would be benevolent and take care of her, or being a beggar and asking for food from the greater nation. If you didn't have land, if you didn't have a husband, you couldn't survive. And now it was 3 women now without a husband. So you have Naomi, the mother-in-law, Ruth, and Orpah, and they had to decide, what in the world should we do? Pick up the story just a little bit later in chapter 1. They decide to go back, and I'll explain kind of how Ruth went back and Orpah went back to Moab, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. But let me just read to you in verse 19. So basically, Ruth and flashing forward, Ruth and Naomi go back home for some help from the people of Israel, and says, so the 2 women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them, and the woman explained, "Can this be Naomi? Don't call me Naomi." And Naomi is a play on the Hebrew word for being very beautiful, pleasant, being very happy. "Don't call me that," she told him. "Call me Mara," which means bitterness, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. Do you notice the personal pronoun there a lot? God has done this to me. God has afflicted me. Why call me pleasant and call me that name? Call me bitter, because my life is not good. she's really, really struggling here. So Naomi returned from Moab and accompanied by Ruth, the Moabite daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem during the harvest, when the barley harvest was beginning. So basically you have a very self-absorbed, bitter Naomi. And who wouldn't be? I'm not trying to be too hard on her, but she had no options or alternatives to support herself, so she had to go back with family. And Ruth came with her, and again, I'll explain how significant that is. But rather than looking at a daughter-in-law as a gift and part of God's provision, she didn't even really introduce her to anybody, like she just showed up and made it all about herself, and she's really, really struggling. A scholar by the name of Younger said this, says, not only has Naomi returned home, so has Ruth. Naomi has returned home empty, unfulfilled, and bitter. Her journey has been a journey into the depths, and she can see nothing else. But there is more. In Naomi's anguished response to the delighted cries of the women to see her, that greeting that I kind of flew through, they were glad to see her when she gave this bitter speech about her name, right? Not only was she not delighted by the cries of the women in Bethlehem, all absorbed in her own world of pain and bitter affliction, she fails even to acknowledge Ruth's presence with her, a presence whose accomplishment transcends the call of religion and hope. Can't be too hard on her. It had to have been awful what she went through. And she might be considered in the spirit of like Job, another book in the Old Testament, where Job is bitterly complaining to God about the circumstances of her life. And God says it's okay to talk to him about pain, but we still have to trust him to work in that pain. We can't blame things on him. We have to take personal responsibility for our part, and we have to do our best to trust him in the midst of the things that are going on. But she's struggling, and she's going to try to make it forward. And so you have to admire her for at least hanging in there and at least trying her best to do what she could to take care of her life. Her pain was real. She needed hope, and she wasn't seeing it right now. I don't know what that is about us. I'm a very hopeful, optimistic person, but sometimes when I go through something really personally painful, I forget about how God was so good in the past, and I kind of go like, well, yeah, you did that, but I don't think you can handle this. I mean, it's so weird for me. I turned 62 last Sunday, and I can't believe how old that sounds. But anyway, how am I? I've been walking with the Lord a good 45 years. I've been in ministry 40 years. How do I still wonder whether I can trust him with a problem when he's done nothing but help me handle stuff my whole life? There's just something kind of broken in us where we want to depend upon logic. We want to go fix the famine ourselves. We want to do things on our own, and it ruins our perspective. And I'm not saying Naomi didn't trust God, but she sure had her perspective blurred by all that she'd been through. And that's what life does to you. It beats you up, and it causes you to think incorrectly about the powerful God that we worship and how he can be trusted no matter what is going on. All right? It's the first idea. Let's talk a little bit about Ruth and kind of tie that opening part together. Ruth, when we look at her, we learn that loving others, what it's like to love others with reckless abandon, what it's like to just flat love somebody so much that it doesn't matter what you're going through. You're going to hang in there with them. So the idea here that Naomi did have was, look, if Ruth and Oprah, if you guys go back to your Moabite family, they'll take you in. They'll provide for you. That's an ancient cultural custom, and that's what the ancient cultures did. They'll at least take care of you. I'll go back to my family, and they'll take care of me. But if you stay with me, we're probably going to be super poor and endangered together, and I don't want to do that to you. So she was very noble in that regard. She was trying to look out for them and say, go back to your Moabite family. And when she did that, I'm in verse 14 of chapter 1. It says, at this news of what she was planning to do and send them back to their Moabite family, they wept aloud. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." Now, this isn't a knock on Orpah. She was doing what culturally she thought was right to do. And this is not written linguistically in the Hebrew language in a negative way. She was doing the thing, I'm going to go back to my family. I have no more husband. I have no children, so I'm going to just go be with my family and they'll take care of me. But Ruth thought very, very differently, very differently. And she says, I got to do this. Ruth said, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you." And these are the famous words that you've probably heard before. "Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her to go away. And that's when we picked up that story that she went back to Bethlehem with her. The word "cling" there is an interesting, desperate thing to do. It's like defying logic or reason and being willing to do something that makes no sense, but your love can't help you but do that. So basically what was happening in terms of Ruth, she was saying, I'm saying no to my family. I'm saying no to the God that I used to worship, Chemosh. I'm saying no to safety and security with my own people, and I'm going to go to a land that I don't know, and I'm going to trust God because I love Naomi, and I feel that her way of life, and probably they had ongoing conversations about the one true God that existed, and all those kinds of things. I'm going to trust her, and I'm going to serve and love her no matter what. Who does that sound like? We studied him 2 or 3 weeks ago. Sounds like Abram, right? Whose later name was changed to Abraham. God said, I want you to go to a country you don't know. I want you to leave your gods, and I want you to trust me. Ruth is the example, the same as Abram, and later his name was Abraham. And she went to this country that she didn't know because she loved Naomi, and she wanted to serve her. She was so obedient that she was willing to take risks, and we'll read about that in a little bit, to glean food and to put herself in danger, to take care of herself and her mother-in-law. But what I find is interesting is she initiates the action of wanting to help her mother-in-law. Let me see what that reference is for you here. You ever have one of those slow mornings where you wonder if you're going to have trouble keeping your thoughts together? I got up this morning and left my house, and I didn't have my keys for my car, which is sort of weird. I mean, I always have my keys, and they're always in my pocket, and I get freaked out if I don't know where my keys are. I got to think, okay? It's my intelligence that drives me that way. But anyway, I get obsessed about it. So I'm down there, and my son had taken my keys to do something, so it was his fault, not mine. But I found them, and then I got back down to the car and started my car, and then I didn't have my phone. I'm like, okay, maybe I should just stay here today. Nothing's really working out quite right. We don't always think through what we're going to encounter and what we're doing and as we go. But Ruth really is very, very bold in her understanding of what she wants to do. She decides that I'm going to go glean some of the leftover stuff of the barley harvest to take care of us. Now, just for your reference, if you want just some Old Testament interest in this, in Deuteronomy, let's do Deuteronomy 24, verse 19. She was doing something customarily that the poor people and oppressed people could do to be fed if they didn't have family and husbands and stuff to take care of them and land. Deuteronomy 24:19 says, when you are harvesting in your field and you overlook a sheaf, do not go back to get it. Leave it for the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. When you beat the olives from the trees, do not go over the branches a second time. Leave what remains for the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widow. When you harvest the grapes in your vineyard, do not go over the grapevines again. Leave what remains for the foreigner, for the fatherless, and for the widow. That was a customary way of taking care of the widows and those that are in poverty. And Ruth, a foreigner, knew that custom because she initiated, I'm going to go work in the fields. By the way, women by themselves working in fields were very, very dangerous. And plus, the owner of the fields might not appreciate a foreign woman being there trying to take food that might not belong to her, all those kinds of things. Naomi didn't send her. She initiated to do this, to help take care of things. She was loving her even at her own risks. She initiated that decision. She understood the cultural heritage that there should be some sheaves and some things left behind, some olives and some grapes. And that's how she decided to move forward at great personal risk to herself. There's also a custom, and this is in the realm of trivia a little bit, but every 3 years, a special offering was supposed to be taken for the Levites who didn't have land of their own. And that was also supposed to be for the widows and the fatherless and the orphans as well. So there was a great system to take care of people in poverty. Ruth understood that. She loved her mother-in-law. She went to a foreign land, and she loved with reckless abandon. So we got Naomi and Ruth, but the story's not complete until you talk about Boaz. Okay, so Boaz is an example of trusting God by obediently loving others. So let's just read just a little bit here. This Ruth woman is working very hard. He sees her at a distance and says, "Who is this woman?" She's obviously working hard. And he comes to her, and I'm in chapter 3, verse 10. It says, "The Lord bless you, my daughter. This kindness," I'm sorry, I skipped ahead too far. Let's go chapter 2. Has anybody seen my keys? My keys. Chapter 2, verse 4. No, I don't like that either. Yeah, let's do verse 4. Chapter 2. It says, "Just then Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted her in the harvest. 'The Lord be with you.' 'The Lord bless you,' they answered." So just a little note here. Boaz doesn't know her from anyone, but he sees this foreign woman working in his fields. And rather than ridiculing her or saying, "Get out of here, you're not part of our people," he blesses her. So he has this example of a blessing love. You can tell he's a Goel, he's a person of great character who handles the law with wisdom and righteousness and understanding. Verse 5 says, Boaz asked the overseer, his harvesters, "Who does that young woman belong to?" Verse 6, the overseer replied, "She is the Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi. She said, 'Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters.'" We've already talked about this. "She came into the field and has remained here from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter." So Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with the women who work with me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the women. I have told the men not to lay a hand on you." That's why it could be dangerous, so he had to give instructions, leave this woman alone. "And whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars that the men have filled." At this she bowed down with her face to the ground. She asked, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes? I'm a foreigner." Boaz says, "I have been told all about you, about what you've done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and your mother and your homeland to live with people you do not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done, this great act of faith and abandon. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have now come to take refuge." So here's a great picture of Boaz treating someone that didn't deserve to be treated this way, giving her unusually generous gleaning rights. You know, no one could glean or pick up leftovers with this much authority behind it and those kinds of things. And he understood the sacrifices that she made to come honor Naomi and take care of her and those kinds of things. And so that's the first part of what's happening here that's very, very interesting. And Boaz is very gracious. We get into the interesting part of marriage customs and those kinds of things in chapter 3. Ruth is instructed by Naomi. Naomi's beginning to realize, hey, this is part of my family. Boaz is a member of their clan, and so family's supposed to take care of family. And he wasn't married. He was older. It wasn't necessarily young and attractive and vibrant per se, but he was very respected and very wise. They had this custom where a way to propose marriage was to sort of submit yourself to someone to lay at their feet. We won't go into all the details. You need to read the story because it's really interesting with lots of interesting pictures of humility and love and faith and those kinds of things. But she went at night and laid at his feet, which is a posture of, I would like you to marry me if you would like to. And Boaz says, which I started to read earlier, chapter 3, verse 10, "The Lord bless you, my daughter. This kindness is greater than that which you have showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer or a kinsman redeemer of the family, there is another who is more closely related than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good, let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning." This is where you run into trouble trying to do one sermon on the book of Ruth. So the kinsman redeemer idea was the family should take care of family. If someone died, you would not leave the wife a widow. You would remarry that wife or take possession of their land and those kinds of things. Whatever was happening there, you would redeem them. You'd buy them back and give them a life of hope and of love. Naomi suggested this to Ruth. Ruth laid at Boaz's feet, and that was the communication, and Boaz responded really well. You notice there isn't any sort of hint of immorality or weirdness here. He didn't take advantage of her. He didn't do anything wrong, but he kept her safe and covered with a blanket at night so she wouldn't be cold. And he said, look, there's someone else that's closer in line to be that redeemer than me. And because he was a righteous man and he knew the law, he had to go talk to that man. So he called all the elders together and talked about it and said, do you want to redeem the land? The guy that was closer said, yeah, I'd like the land. And he says, well, the land also comes with Ruth. And he goes, no thanks. For whatever reason, he wanted the land, but he didn't want the responsibility of a woman. And so Boaz is given the ability to do his duty and to care for this woman who sacrificially not only loved Naomi, but showed love for him and respect and honor for him. So let's read the conclusion of the story, and then I can sum a few things up for you. Chapter 4, verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The woman living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. So you have this kind of cool miracle thing happening where 2 women that were alone and had no hope of survival run into Boaz, and Boaz redeems them both. Then they have a child, and that male child will pass on the blessing of the clan. The name of the clan will go forward. And the book of Ruth closes with a lineage, a genealogy of Obed is the father of Jesse, right? What's it say? Make sure we get it right. It says the significant part is Boaz is the father of Obed, right? Boaz is the father of Obed. Obed is the father of Jesse, which is what we said. And Jesse is the father of who? David. King David, the famous one. The lineage that will eventually be born out in Jesus Christ, the Savior of mankind, our Messiah and our Savior. Boaz, Obed, Jesse, and David. And really what you have with Boaz is a picture of God's divine love expressed in how he acted. And Jesus loves us the same way, unconditionally. And he gave his life for us on the cross, and he rose from the dead. So this is a great example of how we should obediently follow God's ways and love each other with great loyalty and compassion and sacrifice. When I think about the women in my family, I think about several names. I think about Eunice, my great-grandmother, who I was fortunate enough to know. Remember, my mom had kids so young, I got to know my great-grandmother. And she led her daughter, whose name was Thelma. Those are great names. You don't hear those much anymore. Eunice and Thelma, right? So Thelma is my mom's mom, my grandmother. She became a Christian under Eunice's care. And by the way, Eunice was the first person that ever talked to me about God. She played Tennessee Ernie Ford records on her old record player. The record player was gigantic and a little smaller, big cabinet thing. And we would sing about Noah's Ark, and she talked to me about God. First person I ever remember mentioning him. So Eunice led Thelma to Christ. Thelma led my mom, Karen, to Christ. Karen, my mom, led me and my sisters. And by the way, my dad wasn't a Christian when he got married, and she led my dad to Christ. And now I've got to share with my kids about Christ, and I believe they all know him. They're not all growing the same way I would like them to, but they all know Jesus. And my daughter now has four kids. I have grandkids, and they go to church and they hear about Jesus. And that faithfulness of one woman just kind of goes down the line. And I'm so grateful for that. And Boaz's faithfulness went down the line to King David, and it went further down the line to Jesus. And it's an incredible thing what loving each other and being faithful can do. If you wonder what the New Testament talks about what true love is, just to kind of give you a reference, we've been in Ruth and Deuteronomy. James 1:27 is a pretty important statement. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: not using your mouth and advancing yourself and doing what you want to do. Religion is pure and faultless is this: to look after the orphans and the widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. That's why we are involved in a vibrant children's ministry. That's why we do things like Vacation Bible School, not just for the kids, but for single moms that are raising kids, and for anybody that really needs love and support. We're here to help take care of people. That's why we try to be involved in things like foster care and others, because the true way that you show that you love people is to love people that don't have hope unless you do that. And we try to do that as often as we can. So there's some great things to learn about trusting God, even if you're lonely and struggling like Naomi. God provided Ruth as the perfect gift for her. She didn't see it right away, but then she saw it. They have Obed, and now they have hope, and it's a kind of a cool, fun, uplifting thing to think about. So we need to learn to trust God through things, and we need to love each other very sacrificially. It's the big lesson here. So here's your application points. God is always at work. What do you need to trust him with today? What's going on today that you really need to trust him with? I found this interesting quote about Naomi that I thought was really pretty balanced. It's by a scholar by the name of Block. Let me read this to you. Because Naomi was struggling so much, her natural self-absorption and her pain and her affliction, she couldn't quite see how to fully trust God. And then he goes and makes a comparison to us. He says, we depend upon our logic, which is helpful to a point. But human logic often breaks down in the midst of pain. In fact, if Ruth had followed Naomi's logic as Orpah did, then Naomi's logic would have completely eliminated any chance of her reversal with Ruth coming with her. Thankfully, Ruth does not buy into Naomi's logic in spite of Naomi's 3 attempts to dissuade her. I didn't go through all 3, we just went through the one. Human wisdom does not accomplish the will of God. He describes loneliness as a terrible thing, but it doesn't determine who God really is. If you've ever been lonely, you can be lonely because no one's around. But have you ever been lonely when you're with people and you still feel like people don't understand you, and you got everyone around that you kind of love, but they still don't get what you're going through? God says, look, don't try to figure that out through logic and through human reason. You just got to surrender to me and trust me that I have a plan, that I'm working, and that I can help you, and no matter how desperate you might feel. So again, what are you going through that God needs to show up because you just don't know what to do? God's faithful. He loves you. He doesn't always tell you why he does certain things, but he loves you. And he gives us a great example of unconditional love and loyal love through Boaz. And Jesus does the same as he walked through life, and we can trust Jesus with anything. And so you just need to ask for God's help in the midst of whatever it is that you're going through. And then maybe do me a favor. I've learned this the last couple of weeks. Don't complain about how God helps, especially if it's not what you would want. He's better than you at figuring things out. He just is. And I found myself kind of complaining. I was wanting something to happen, and what I wanted to happen did happen, but in a totally, really awful, weird way. And God didn't ask me about it, which I don't appreciate. But that's where trust comes in, and I trust him. And I got nowhere else to go. And whether you realize it, you don't have anywhere else to go either. He created you. He loves you. He's perfect. He's just in all of his ways. He's provided for us to have a relationship with him through his son, Jesus Christ. And Jesus can be trusted no matter what, right? So whatever you need to trust him with, give that to him. And then I just thought I'd ask the second question. Are you loving others like Ruth and Boaz, with that reckless abandon, with that loyal love? Is there anybody that specifically needs to see that kind of love today? I'm telling you, if you love people that deserve it, it's fine, but it doesn't amount much. If you love people that don't deserve it, it changes everything. And it speaks in ways that you'll never be able to understand, but only God can help you do that. So maybe there's someone that you really need to love today. All right, let's pray. Father, thank you for your word and the book of Ruth. Gosh, I feel like I was totally flying through that thing, and I apologize maybe for being a little bit scattered, Lord, but it's a wonderful story. I pray that maybe you would give us a desire to read it again if we haven't read it in a while, and to take some of these ideas and really apply them. Father, thanks for the example of Naomi she just was lost and hurting, and nowhere in here is your condemning voice, Naomi, you're lousy, I can't believe you're acting this way. You gave her Ruth, and you provided for her, and you captured her heart, even though she was really struggling. I pray that you would do that for us as well if we're in that situation. Father, thank you for Ruth, and I don't know how she had the courage to leave everything that she was comfortable with, even after she had lost her husband, and just cling to Naomi. Naomi had to have drawn her in a winsome way somehow, but she knew her only hope was through Naomi and her people, and ultimately you, God. So thanks for that example. And Boaz doesn't get a lot of maybe publicity, but what a good man. And what a great example for us to love and to sacrifice for others, and to treat people that may not logically deserve our respect, but treat them with great love and honor. And may we have the heart to love those in distress, those that are orphaned and widowed, those that really, really need our help, and they won't receive help from anybody else. May that be the kind of people we are, the kind of church that we are. Show us how to do all these things, Father, and we'll just be grateful for everything you're doing. In Jesus' name, amen.